our webinar today again, Slovenia and the Dalmatian Coast, happening end of September, beginning of October of next year. This is our new program, and I'm going to tell you all about it in just a second. But before I do that, let me just say a couple of quick words about Wheel and Anchor. For those of you who are new, I see a bunch of names that are attending our webinar today that I don't recognize. So welcome. Thanks for joining our community. What are we all about? We are a community of travelers from all across Canada. If you've recently joined, you've gotten our emails that explain a little bit about who we are, what our vision is, our traveler's creed. We are all about bringing like-minded travelers together. That's kind of our mission, our goal. That's why I set out to start this community about 5 years ago. I've been organizing trips for Canadians for over 30 years. And I've really found a knack, or I've discovered a knack for getting people who just have the same philosophy about travel and about exploring the world and how to interact with other cultures. And, by and large, we hit the nail on the head. And, we've got a group right now in Vietnam, and I'm getting reports back that they're having a marvelous time. People have gelled, they've made friends. That is really what Wheel and Anchor is all about. And our goal, our mission, if you will, is for all of our members to become well-traveled and well-connected. And when we say well-traveled, we mean, there's one thing to say that you've been to a country, you've put it on your TripAdvisor map. I have one of those. I was on it today, like all of these 92 countries that I visited and checking it off the box. But, when you have the time, and we like to design our trips so that you have the time to just be there and not be constantly on the move. That is what connects you. That's what has you have the experience. I always say the way I look at it is, if something resonates with you about the country, the next time, the universe will send you stuff, as it were, whether it's in the media, most prominently. You'll see something on your computer on Facebook, or you'll read it in the newspaper because you've connected with the place. And that for me is the difference, because you keep something in your heart and in your soul about it. So that's kind of what our goal is with all of our trips. So I'm just going to share with you a couple of photos from this past year, from 2022, actually. We have run this trip twice a year, in the spring and the fall, for the last couple of years. Again, everybody's had a marvelous time enjoying this amazing scenery that the Croatian coast has become so well known for. But all the other bells and whistles that are less well known, and really that's the part that I think is key to some of our trips, is that, sure, we're going to go to Dubrovnik. That's the most well-known town of all of them that we're going to visit, but we're going to visit such other interesting places and really get an insight into the culture, into the traditions, into the lifestyle of people in Croatia, along the coast, as well as in Slovenia. And Slovenia is the trip here that is the destination that is the real gem. They're like, wow, how come I didn't know about this place before? And so I'll share with you about that in a second, but I just wanted to show you a few photos from this past year and all of the smiling faces of our members. Allow me to formally introduce my team, myself. So my name is Gordon Dreger. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I curate all of the trips that we do here. I put a lot of time and effort into it. And we'll be doing more of that. Members are asking me all the time if I'm hosting this tour and I'm hosting that tour. I'm hosting less tours now, because for me, the value that I bring to the equation in the Wheel and Anchor story is in understanding the kind of places, the kind of experience that our members want to have, and then finding the right people to deliver on that. So that's kind of what I spend my time doing, is curating the best possible travel experiences. Of course, I don't do this alone. I have a whole team of people, but the ones that are most important are Barb, she was on a little bit earlier, and Paula, our trip specialists. They are the wonderful women who will be on the other end of the phone when you call in and say, I'm interested in joining you on this trip to Slovenia and the Dalmatian coast. They will get your questions answered on that, or this, or any trip for that matter, and make sure that you have what you need to feel confident and to feel excited about joining us on our trips. So today, I'm going to take you on a little bit of a digital journey, as I like to call it, on this newly revised program down the coast of Croatia, as they call it, the Dalmatian Coast, as well as to Slovenia. So let's look at the map. For those of you who have considered this program before, or maybe you've even been on this program before, as I say, we've run it a number of times. The geography that we cover is more or less the same. So we are in Slovenia, which of course is this small country that's just to the south, at the south end of the Alps. We're going to spend the first number of days there in Ljubljana. So this is a change. We previously were staying in Lake Bled itself, but the feedback we got, people love Ljubljana so much. There's just not enough time. And so therefore I thought, okay, well, let's go back. This is actually the first time we ran this program. We stayed in Ljubljana. We changed to Lake Bled. Now we're back in Ljubljana for this trip in the fall. The next change that we're doing is that we are going to visit Istria, which is this peninsula here in the Adriatic Sea, at the beginning of the trip, so after Slovenia. And what this means is that it just means that instead of going all the way down to the south, to the archipelago here that we cruise through, and then back up north, we only have one leg down. So that is a bit of a change on the trip. And the other change is, and I'll explain this in a second when we go into the day-by-day itineraries, we're going to be staying here in Rovinj. I stayed here for a few days in October. I fell in love with the place. Wow, what a charming town. And I specifically went to look around Istria, because I hadn't been there in a long, long time. And it's changed so much in the last 10 years. That I wanted to get a feel for it. And yeah, I love this area. I could spend weeks here. So we, as I say, we front end the whole land portion of the trip. We then do an overland journey from Rovinj via Opatija. So we're still going to visit Opatija, which is where we have stayed for the last couple of years, and we will be staying this coming May, down to the south part of the country, the so-called Dalmatian Coast. We are going to embark in a little town called Šibenik. Again, a change I've made, partly because typically most ships, 95%, start or end in Split, which is a beautiful town, and we are going there. But it is sheer madness, particularly on the Saturday or the Sunday, when 90% of these cruises arrive and depart. The town is kind of mad. So I made a change, and I've made a deal with the ship that we chartered. I'll tell you about in a second. We're going to pick you up in Šibenik, a super gorgeous town that you normally don't visit, because most cruises go from Split around these islands and then back to Split. But again, one other change is that, first of all, not only are we starting in Šibenik, which gives us a chance to see Šibenik and Premošten and Trogir, which most people don't see and are absolutely well worth seeing. We are also doing the trip one way. So we're going to start in Šibenik. We're going to end in Dubrovnik. Gives us more time to be able to visit these couple extra towns, to head out to Biševo, which is where you have the Blue Cave, and then end in Dubrovnik. And we have extra time because we're going to spend 2 nights in Cavtat, a lovely town that I discovered 2 trips ago when I was in Croatia. And it just means that we're going to have a whole heck of a lot more time in and around Dubrovnik than we've had on previous trips. So that is the overview. Again, we're covering the same geography for the most part. We're just making things a little bit different. And so I will say that about this trip. This trip is more expensive than the trips that we've offered before, for some reasons that I'll explain to you in a second. I think it's well worth it. If you are looking for a more value-minded trip, value in the sense of less expensive, our trip in May follows the old itinerary. Again, a great itinerary. We refined it, perfected it, but it is a little bit less expensive. So if you look at this and go, oh, this is great, this is cool, but it's like, this is a little more than the budget might allow, then consider joining us. There's some spots left on our May trip. And there is obviously a webinar and a replay available on the YouTube channel, or we can send it to you for that trip so you understand the difference. But this one has some real highlights. And again, I did that on purpose. So let's get started. We're arriving in Ljubljana, as we have done on previous trips. Ljubljana, capital of Slovenia, an unknown town, unless you've been there. you wouldn't really pay a lot of attention to Ljubljana because it's a small capital. It's one of Europe's smaller capitals. It's a phenomenal city. When you go around, you sometimes you might think that you're in Austria. A lot of similarities to the architecture, to the style, to the street design, and so on, as you'll find in neighboring Austria. And there's a beautiful river that runs through it. You can see here there's the triple bridge, which is at the main square of town that you find here. You almost don't even know that it's a triple bridge. But anyway, I'm not gonna spoil all of the details of the trip. We're gonna arrive into Ljubljana as usual. Not a lot of plans the first day. We'll do an icebreaker event nearby. We're staying at the Grand Union Hotel. Again, I've used this property in the past for our guests. I think it's an amazing one. It is literally about 100 meters from this bridge, which is kind of in the center of town. So location is A1. They've just restored the hotel, renovated all the rooms. It's sort of an art nouveau style of architecture. A beautiful cafe. It's a terrific hotel. I'm delighted that we're going to be heading back there for our stay in Ljubljana. So as I say, we won't plan a lot the first day, but we're going to get right into it, touring around the city with our local Slovenian guide. We have some great guides that we've gotten to know over the years. They're going to show us the town. And as I say, it's not a big town. Everything that you will need to see and want to see here is on foot. Of course, we're going to make a visit up to the Ljubljana Castle that you see up here at the top of the hill. We're gonna see a number of other interesting, the Dragon Bridge with the two massive dragons that adorn both sides of the bridge across that river that I showed you before. So many cool little things, but there'll be also ample time to wander around on your own. Again, this was feedback we'd gotten from our members. People said, we just want more time to just be in Ljubljana. So we'll wander around. We'll have a chance to have a welcome dinner at a phenomenal restaurant in the castle. So that'll be later on in the afternoon. So we'll go up, we'll come down, we'll go back up to the castle. You'll get a view as the sun is setting over the city. It's absolutely magnificent. The next day, we're going to head up to Bled, which is, of course, in the meantime, somewhat more famous lake. Again, to the extent that you know Slovenia, but Lake Bled is the most famous lake, largely because of the island and St. Mary's Church that's here in the middle. We'll stop at the town. We'll take a rowboat over. We don't have to row ourselves. We'll visit the church. You have the opportunity to ring the church bell. It's a lovely spot, and you can see by the scenery nestled to the south of the Alps how magical it is. So we'll visit Bled Castle, which is up here on the rock. So we're going to spend a good half a day in Bled. It's only about a 40-minute drive from Ljubljana, so we're there on a hop, skip, and a jump, so to speak. And then in the latter part of the day, we're also going to visit Lake Bohinj, which is the largest lake in Slovenia, and in some ways even more picturesque than Lake Bled. Lake Bled is the famous one. Most overseas tourists never make it to Lake Bohinj, but once you've been there and you've looked around, you'll think, how did I not know that this was here? Because it's truly, truly magical. So we'll have a day of mountains and lakes in Slovenia. And then before heading out of town and heading down to the Slovenian coast. So we're going to check out in the morning, and we're going to head down to a town called Piran, which is the only sort of resort town. Slovenia has a very small section of coastline on the Adriatic, and this is the spot. So it's quite a picturesque spot. We'll spend some time looking around this very attractive little town, Slovenia's only seaside town. We'll have lunch out here, and then we will then drive down to Rovinj later on in the day. Overall, it's like only a couple of hours of driving. It's not great distances, some lovely scenery along the way. And I'm really delighted that I was able to make a deal with this hotel in Rovinj. We don't typically include five-star hotels, but this one I just fell in love with. It's called the Montemolini. It is just outside the downtown core of Rovinj, which is lovely and cute and charming, but they have really only very tiny hotels in the town center. So we're about a 15-20 minute walk away from Rovaniemi town, but the hotel itself, as you can see, right on the seaside, it's adults only, which is always a benefit. It has lovely spa facilities and a swimming pool, and then the neighboring hotel that is literally right adjacent has an even bigger spa facility that one can access from the Monte Molini. So we're going to spend 5 nights here. You're going to absolutely love this spot. In fact, you're going to love it so much you're just going to want to come back. Rovaniemi is a lovely town. The hotel is amazing, and it's here that we're going to meet our guide Alex. And he's going to be taking us around for, I think, all of the days that we spend here in Istria. So Istria, as I mentioned again, is a large peninsula, the largest peninsula on the Adriatic Sea. And it is the sort of breadbasket, if you will, of Croatia. So it is known for all kinds of agricultural activities. We're going to enjoy some of them. That's part of the reason that we're spending the time here. The first full day that we're in Rovaniemi, we're going to look around the town, obviously have a guided tour, and check out all of these quaint little alleys, and it sort of goes up and down, and it's a remarkable spot. And again, it was very highly rated on past trips where we literally only stopped in for a brief visit. So I think it's great that we're actually spending as much time as we are, because you get the experience of what it's like to actually live and breathe in one of these Adriatic towns. We will also visit a olive oil farm. In fact, it's much more than olive oil. I went and visited this farm as well with Alex when I was there in October, and they do all kinds of different fruits and vegetables. In fact, they supply the plant seedlings to other nurseries and also to sort of private home gardeners and all the rest of it. And they do a great job of explaining how they produce their homemade olive oil and many of the other things that they produce on site there. It was one of the more fascinating sort of farm visits, if you will, that I've done. So that's going to be part of our day just outside of Rovaniemi. Then we're going on the next day, our second day in Rovaniemi. We're going to head up to the hills, to the central part of Istria, and we're going to go truffle hunting. You may not know it, and honestly, I was not even aware myself of the extent of which truffles are famous from this region, partly because they have both black and white truffles that can be harvested here. And if you know anything about truffles, they are extremely rare. They're extremely expensive. The white ones are about 10 times as much as expensive as the black ones are, but even the black ones are really expensive. And there is a spot here, which is a wonderful, wonderful truffle producer, if you will, and the producer in the sense that they have the facilities, the dogs to go out truffle hunting. We'll visit the facility. It's a great spot, sitting up on a hill with amazing views over the countryside, and you see the area where truffles come from. And this is one of the most important truffle areas in the world. And so even if you don't even like truffles, although, I'd be surprised, because if you've had the real truffles, it's hard not to like them. You will be mesmerized by the whole experience. In fact, at this time of the year in October, they have an international truffle festival. People come from all over the world just for the Istrian truffle. So, as I say, we're going to visit the facility. We're going to have a great guide. We're going to obviously taste some various dishes prepared with truffle. They've got a whole assortment of stuff. You're going to want to take all of it with you that they produce with truffles, everything from mustard to potato chips to you name it. And they have the cutest dogs, who are the truffle dogs. They're the ones that go and sniff out these prized mushrooms. I mean, truffles are effectively, a fungus, as you know. So it's going to be a great day. And again, this is something that is really, I think, a highlight of the trip that you may not have expected and you wouldn't necessarily think of unless you knew the significance of truffles in this part of the world. So there's a shot of myself and Alex, who's going to be your guide. This guy, he is really one of the local experts on truffles. I met him through a mutual friend of ours. It's how I meet a lot of the people. And I was really stricken by his passion for the region of Istria and everything that it offers. You will learn so much about the region as a whole, the history, and of course the agricultural tourism, in particular the truffles. He knows everything and everyone. He's quite a remarkable guy. And that is actually the town of Motovun in the back, which is where we're going to be visiting after we do our truffle hunt. And they're gonna have a wine tasting at the spot that we're standing, a brand new winery that they've opened a restaurant and tasting room, phenomenal facility with this view. It's truly amazing. So that's our day there. I have to keep moving because otherwise I'll rant on about this forever. I was just so excited by this new itinerary. We're also going to head to the south on the coast to visit a town called Pula. And Pula is best known for this incredible amphitheater. I walked around it, and then I walked around it again because there's amphitheaters like the Colosseum in Rome, but this is one of the largest, most intact ones that you'll find anywhere in Europe. It's a remarkable structure. So we'll have a little bit of the historical part. We'll see some other parts of Pula, but more importantly, again, touching on the culinary aspect of the trip, we're going to go to a little town in Kokuni, which is a small village not far away from Pula, and here we'll learn about goats and goat cheese, goat dairy products, if you will, and have a delicious lunch and learn more about this part of Istria. We, as you probably know, or you may not know from our trips, when we go out and we generally have 2 meals a day. So you have breakfast at the hotel. You'll have incredible lunch. We don't include dinner on these days because it's just too much, but there's so many great restaurants in Rovinj. You're probably going to go out for dinner, but you're just going to be so full from the experience that we have tasting all this great food and wine all day long. Just north of Rovinj, so a little further up the coast, is a town called Porec. I was contemplating staying here, but my favorite of all of them was Rovinj, so that's where we ended up. But Porec is a lovely town as well. We'll have not a long day here, probably a half day, with a terrific lunch in town. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, in particular the basilica that you see in the middle here. It's a phenomenal structure. I only had time to sort of stick my head in the door, and I wished I'd had a lot more time here. So, but a lovely day to enjoy Porec and get a chance of this town. And most importantly, you'll have more time to spend wandering around Rovinj, because that'll be our last full day around there. The next day we head off. This will be our longest travel day on the trip. It's kind of no way around it. We were looking a million different ways, but it's not even that bad. We're going to drive about an hour or so to Opatija, and Opatija, which is where we currently are staying on our Croatia and Adriatic Coast programs up till this coming May, is a lovely town. In fact, this town was the preferred seaside resort destination for the royalty of Europe for decades and decades, mostly in the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century, is when Opatija was sort of celebrated for that. It still retains a lot of the elegance of those bygone days, but it's just changed and evolved as these towns invariably do. So we'll stop at Opatija. We'll continue our way down the coast, heading towards Šibenik, where we'll arrive later in the afternoon. The drive from Opatija to Šibenik is about 3.5 to 4 hours. Obviously, we'll make a rest break along the way. By the time we go to Opatija and have lunch here, and then get on our way, it'll be the latter part of the afternoon, early evening before we arrive on our ship in Šibenik. But again, the beauty is that we are embarking on a much quieter town than in Split. So we're then going to arrive on our ship. And again, this is another one of the parts that I'm really excited about. I have finally managed to charter the Adriatic Queen. So I've been after this vessel for some years. And the reason I love it is, first of all, it's only 15 cabins. So it's smaller. It's a little bit smaller. Most of the vessels are sort of 17, 18 cabins, as many as 20, I think, on the Adriatic. But this one is a lovely 15 cabins. All of them are on the main deck. So all of them have windows in the doors, but regardless, it doesn't really matter on the Adriatic because you're out of your cabin all day long anyway. This is not the type of place that you spend a lot of time in your cabin other than sleeping. But regardless, all the cabins on one main deck. There's one on the so-called bridge deck, so on the upper deck behind the bridge. But that is a big benefit, I think, for the ship. And the other thing that I love about this ship is the fact that it is family owned and operated. So it's a wonderful gentleman by the name of Josko Pedicic. And I'll just sort of flip through the pictures of the rooms. I say 15 cabins, all wonderfully appointed, minimalist, comfortable. They're not fancy, but they are very well looked after, as is the dining room and all of the sort of the lounge areas on the boat, because it is family owned and operated. So I showed up on the vessel here with Josko. This is the owner, the captain, a lovely chap. His son is in charge of sort of the F&B. His wife does some of the back of the house stuff. Lovely people. And I could tell there was another group of people on the ship when I visited in October. They really care about the experience so much more than just, and most of the other ships are just employees of big companies that, it's just a job. But for them, this is their livelihood, their passion. And I really got that sense. And I'm so excited that finally, after all these years, I was able to charter the ship, because I've been after them for a long time. But anyway, we got it. So for next year, come join us, the Adriatic Queen. So as I mentioned, I stuck the map up here again. Most trips on the Adriatic coast go between Split and Dubrovnik, or actually most of them go Split to Split. So they do the islands and come back in a week. We are starting here in Šibenik. It's not far away, but the key thing is that when we're in Šibenik on our vessel, there might be another vessel or two in town. But we'll sort of feel like we have the town to ourselves. I mean, of course, there's obviously other travelers and tourists there. And I like Šibenik. It's not as big as Split. Split is obviously the second largest city in Croatia. But it is absolutely charming. All glistening white polished marble, or it's not marble, it's more like a limestone streets. It's a great spot to embark and disembark. And as I say, we'll be going one way, making our way through the islands, all the stops that we've done before, and then some, ending up in Dubrovnik. So I just wanted to put the map on again. So we'll embark on our ship in Šibenik. We'll have the evening there at leisure. You'll be able to see the town, go out for dinner. This again is the beauty of this itinerary, is that typically we are sailing in the morning during breakfast all the way through the morning, depending on how far we're going, until lunchtime. So we have breakfast, lunch on board the vessel. Early after, sometimes we'll make a swim stop in the morning, depending on our timing. Sometimes we'll have a tour in the morning, but generally the programming is breakfast, leisurely sailing in the morning, looking at the beautiful seaside and the mountains that run all along the coast. Lunch on board. Then we get we anchor, or we dock for the afternoon, and then we explore the town with a guided tour in some cases, in other cases on our own, and then we have the evening there, so you get to go on shore into these towns, villages, and have dinner there, because we usually spend the night in port, and then early the next morning we rinse and repeat, as it were. We'll visit Primošten, a lovely little town here, not far from Šibenik. That'll be one of the first places that we visit in the morning of our first full day on board the boat. We'll also visit Trogir, which is actually where we'll dock and spend the night. And the next day we'll get taken into Split. So then we'll be in Split on a Monday, which means all those other boats. And when I was there, which was second week of October this year, so roughly around the same time as our trip next year, on Saturday and Sunday, the place was jam-packed. And I went on a Saturday and a Sunday because that was the only time I could see all the vessels. And it's a zoo. And so when we were able to work out a way to avoid that, so we show up on Monday, everybody else is gone. We get a great spot. We're not docked necessarily next to 6 other boats. It's a good time to see Split. Split is also one of the stops where the big cruise ships stop, as well as with Dubrovnik. So you never know if you're going to have one of those in town. But just the fact that it's not a weekend is going to make a huge difference. Split, again, the second largest city in Croatia. It is most famous for the Diocletian's Palace, which you see a part of the facade of that here. A remarkable, another UNESCO site. that we'll get a full tour of, and then all of the other alleyways. You'll see a theme here throughout all the towns that we're going to visit. But of course, Split is a bigger town, super charming. You'll have time to enjoy dinner at one of these lovely restaurants along the promenade. We moor about 300 meters from this location here, so about as close to the center as you can get. So it'll be a great day in Split. From here, we head across out into the islands, visiting Hvar. And Hvar is one of the most popular in Croatia. It's very popular among the jet set crew. You can see the yachts that are moored in Hvar. It's a very lively place in the evening, but it also has some remarkable history and architecture. So we will have a guided tour in Hvar. In fact, I've arranged, we're going to go up to the fortress, which is sort of sits above the town, and you get a great view over the harbor as well as the broader sort of archipelago. Once again, we'll spend the night in Hvar, so you'll have a chance to go out and witness some of this nightlife and craziness. It's not, again, the beauty of October again is that you're well past the main peak season. You wouldn't want to be near this place in the peak season because it's too much of a zoo, but it's just the right amount of activity, the right weather, the right sea temperature. This is just the right time to go. In fact, our cruise manager, Bernarda, who will be joining us for this trip as well, has always said she thinks the first week of October is the best time to go to Croatia and she's down there hosting trips for the entire season. So that's the day in Hvar. We'll sail further out into the archipelago, and here we're going to head for the island of Bishevo, which is where we can visit the Blue Cave. So the Blue Cave, just like other blue caves in the world, or blue grottos like the one in Capri near Naples in Italy, is one of the most famous. This one is very similar to that. We'll get picked up in little wooden boats that will take us inside the Blue Cave, of course, weather permitting. If the seas happen to be rough, not typically in October. It's usually a pretty calm time of the year to sail along the coast, but we'll visit this wonderful Blue Cave. If for some reason the weather doesn't permit, instead we'll do wine tasting, because that's a good substitute for taking a boat trip into a cave. And we'll end up later on that day in the main town of Vis, and that's where we'll spend the evening. And as I say, enjoy some of the. Actually, we'll have a captain's dinner on this night because Vis is a little bit too quiet in terms of places to eat. So we're going to put our captain's dinner on this night. Again, always a lot of fun, particularly with Yoshko and his family, because they are really there to make it a great experience for all of their guests and for our Wheel and Anchor members. So from Vis, we're going to head on to Korčula. I must admit, this is my favorite of the stops on the Adriatic coast. For some reason, there's something about this town that I love. We moor right here, where you see this vessel here. Typically, there's a bunch of boats moored around here. The city is interesting because, again, narrow streets, same theme like the other ones, but it's all designed in a herringbone pattern. And apparently they did that to give the city sort of ventilation, like a form of natural air conditioning, if you will. So there is a funky design to it. I like it. There's a promenade that runs all the way down the backside of town. Some great little wine bars. We tasted some amazing wines and stuff in Korčula. In fact, we'll go out around a little bit to see to do a wine tasting. And as I say, we'll spend the day in here, and this is always a favorite stop for our members. From Korčula, we then head down to Dubrovnik. So we'll overnight and sail for the following morning, and in fact, we'll stay in Korčula for the morning. So we're actually going to leave a little bit later in the day, partly because of the timing of when we're allowed to go into Dubrovnik. So that means we'll have lunch on board, and then we'll head to Dubrovnik, where we will arrive later in the afternoon. But again, how we've timed this trip gives us as much time, more time than we've ever had in Dubrovnik. So when we get in the later part of the afternoon, we'll get our walking tour. We'll get inside the walls. You'll get to experience what Dubrovnik is all about. Of course, Game of Thrones fans will be glued to every word of the guide to know all of the different scenes and where things were shot and so on, because of course, so much of that famous TV series was done in Dubrovnik. But we're going to have lots of time there. So we're going to spend our last night on board the vessel in Dubrovnik. You'll have dinner as usual on your own, and we'll by that time be able to point you out to lots of places where you'll be able to enjoy dinner. The following morning, we're going to we have to disembark the boat. We have to say goodbye to Yoshko and his family, and we will take the luggage directly to our hotel, which will give you another full day. We're also going to hand you the so-called Dubrovnik card, the Dubrovnik pass, I think they call it, which is good for 24 hours. Most importantly, gives you the opportunity to get up on those medieval city walls. Standing on those walls, and I say this in every webinar, but I just thinking of it, it sends shivers down my spine, because it is such an incredible experience to look over this best preserved medieval city in Europe. It is really, really remarkable. And we will, because we're there for so long, we will time the visit to the walls appropriately. So it could be that our guide says, hey, there's no cruise ship here today, or there's a nice sunset. Let's go up on the walls the previous evening, or we'll go first thing in the morning of this next day when we disembark from the ship, because we'll be free of our luggage at that point. We'll decide it when the best time is, because they'll know when the cruise ships are there. On a bad day, you could have 3 cruise ships there, which means you're going to have 10,000 people descending upon the city. On a good day, there'll be none, which is not to say that it's not busy, but we try to time things appropriately. So that'll be Dubrovnik. As I say, we'll spend the full day there. In the later part of the afternoon, we'll head off to Cavtat, which is where we're going to be staying. Cavtat is a town that is just about a 20-minute drive from Dubrovnik. It's away from the hullabaloo. It's a great town to visit. I wouldn't want to stay anywhere near it, to be honest with you, because it's kind of loud and crazy. Cavtat is the perfect spot. I visited it a couple of years ago when I was there. So we'll stay on the harbor. So it's like staying in one of these other towns like Rovinj, but without the hustle bustle that you have in Dubrovnik. We're not far away. And in fact, we're going to return the next day to visit Srd, which is a town that has an amazing museum and some beautiful views like you see here. So this will give us, again, a different perspective on this whole region and the history of Dubrovnik and the environs, because Dubrovnik, of course, was a city-state for a long, long time. In fact, until the early part of the 20th century. So you'll hear all about it. We'll make one more visit back to Dubrovnik. And on the way, you'll get a chance to get a great view overlooking the city, which is again something that we haven't done on previous trips. So we're going to get Dubrovnik from all angles this time around, and we'll do our farewell dinner right in Dubrovnik at our usual spot. I can say that because I discovered this restaurant on our first group to Croatia some years ago, and we've been going back every time because everybody's just blown away by this spot. So that will wrap up our trip. We'll bring you, of course, back to the airport in Dubrovnik, and we'll be flying home from there. And that will be this most amazing and newly reinvigorated trip down the Dalmatian coast of Croatia. So, of course, all of the details are in our program itinerary, but I'm going to just touch on a few of the key facts here. So the timing again, September 27th to the October the 14th. So it's also a little bit longer than our past trips to Slovenia in this region. I think people can't get enough of it. You get your pricing here, Canadian dollars, of course, and we have an early bird bonus, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But most of the cabins are on the main deck. In fact, as I mentioned, there's only one on the bridge deck. So if you're somebody that has to be above everybody else, you want to grab that one quickly because there's only one of them. All of our inclusions, of course, we've got 10 nights in wonderful hotels, including the Grand Union in Ljubljana, in the Montemolini, in Rovinj, and the Hotel Croatia in Cavtat, some great hotels along the way. So in total, you've got 17 nights. We've got breakfast every day. On board the ship, we have lunch and a couple of dinners on board. Most of the dinners are not included, but we have a lot of lunches on all of our excursions, which are often have a culinary, particularly on this trip for the first time. It's very culinary oriented. So if you enjoy fine food, you're going to particularly enjoy what this trip has to offer, and all of the other stuff that I'm not going to go through in great detail. Of course, the only thing that is additional is your airfare and your insurance, both of which we can quote you on. If you need that, we're happy to provide airfare, but you're also welcome to book it on your own. We do just strongly recommend that you take travel insurance. To give you a sense of flights from pretty much anywhere in Canada, we were just checking what they were looking like this year at this time. So you're in and around 13 to 1500 bucks Canadian return economy class from most cities, in most major cities, at least in Canada. But of course, we can quote you from any city at all. And as usual, if you book in the next couple of weeks, they didn't give us a lot of time, but if we get our deposits in early before Christmas, then we get a couple of $100 off each. So we pass that on to you. So please do, if you are thinking of joining us, you can join us and get that early bird booking bonus. But as I mentioned before, if you are itching to go to Croatia earlier, please join us in May. We have some spots left on that trip, which is also a great trip and a great vessel. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. We just decided to change things up a little bit for the fall. So now it's time, Barb, for any questions that might have come in. I think a few may have come in. If you have a question that is specific to your own circumstances, what you want to do, please do drop Paula or Barb a message, an email, or you can give them a call and let them know, and they'll be happy to get your questions answered. So in the meantime, Barb, any questions that have come in from our members?
Yeah, on the actual boat, is there alcohol included? Can they get alcohol on board?
Yeah, so alcohol is not included. Absolutely, it can be purchased on board. Prices are fairly reasonable. But we didn't include, other than with our captain's dinner, I think, but for the most part, the beverages on board throughout are on your own, because we do have some members that also don't drink alcohol, and some who perhaps like a little more, and some who like less. So that's why we don't include beverages on our trips for the most part.
Okay. And the group size on this one?
The group size will be, so there's only 15 cabins on this vessel, and one of them is for our host. So the maximum it could be would be 28 guests. Now, please keep in mind that we will be doing this in two groups, because as most of our members will know, I don't like groups over about 18, 19 people. So we will be doing all of our sightseeing in two groups of up to 14 people. Depends how many solo travelers we have. We always get a handful, at least a handful. In fact, on this last trip, almost half the trip was solo travelers. Which means the number of people on board will be less, because we only have 14 cabins available. So it'll be a maximum of 28. If I was to guess, it'll probably be somewhere around 24 to 26 people. So you'll have two groups of 12 to 13.
Okay, perfect. Ingrid's asking if we have matching up people on the room. Do we have room match program? That's our companion for the road.
Good question. Our room match program is called Companions for the Road, and it's different than any other program, because my philosophy is, who wants to be just thrown into a room with somebody that they don't know without any knowledge of what they are? To me, I'm not going to spend 10 grand on a trip and not know anything about my roommate. I'm just not going to do that. Other people might want to take that risk. So our Companions for the Road program is a little bit different, in the sense that we have a little questionnaire. It's short. I think there's 10 questions on it, Barb, not more anyway, right, where we ask about your travel habits. So we try to get a little bit of a sense of who you are as a traveler. And so we capture that information. We exchange it with other people who are interested on the same trip that you are, but we exchange it without a name. And so basically you can find somebody's attributes, if you will. Then if it looks like, oh, that's okay, that works for me, they don't snore, or they get up early, or they don't get up early, or whatever the case may be, then we will offer both members an opportunity to contact each other. And if both say, yes, I'd like to meet the other person, then we will exchange the name and the phone number, and then they can get in touch with each other and have a conversation about whether they'd like to travel together on the trip. It works out 90, I don't know, Barb, how much would you say? It works out, I think, 98% of the time that you find somebody who's a suitable travel companion. That's our goal.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. What about the weather?
The weather, as I mentioned, in October, I think is perfect. So I was there in the first week of October this year. It was almost hot. I think it was 28 on the hottest day. That is unusual. Typically in October, you're looking at temperatures in the low 20s, even getting up to 24. It could be a little cooler. We always say that you never know what it's going to be with the weather, but it's a great time, largely because the Mediterranean is warm, right? It gets very hot in summertime here in Croatia. And so the Mediterranean will probably be at least 22, 23 degrees Celsius. So that's in the low 70s well into October. So that's what you're looking like. And usually the seas are fairly calm. And I say that because you never know, a thunderstorm or a storm can come up and cause a little bit of wave action, but you are in protected waters. So it's generally fairly calm.
Okay, perfect. That is all the questions that have come in this way. But if people have other questions, then they can definitely reach Paula or myself. Just send us an email. And if you're interested at all, just let us know. We can send the additional information document. So that gives other information that might be outside of the program itinerary if we're getting more serious on this one.
Yeah, exactly. So the program itinerary covers the program and the details and the inclusions and all the rest of it. And then all of those other, FAQs, if you will, are located in that additional information document. And then, of course, Paula and Barb have the answers to all the other questions, right, Paul? Right, Barb?
Of course.
Anyway, thank you for joining us. Again, if you do have any other questions or if you'd like to come along on this trip, please drop us a note. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you along. It's an amazing trip. I'm very excited about this new rendition of our trip down the Dalmatian coast. It's going to be amazing. Thanks for joining us today. Our next webinar coming up tomorrow is all about our first trip. Not my first trip, but Wheel and Anchor's first trip to Antarctica. So if you ever thought about visiting the frozen continent, the seventh continent, join us tomorrow at this time for Antarctica, and lots more coming. Stay tuned for this weekend's newsletter. We'll catch you all again very, very soon.